I'm very pleased to be taking part in this webinar on human rights defenders in Kazakhstan. I think it's very timely because there have been increased attacks on HRDs recently. Just last month, we issued a statement on Yelena Semyonova. She monitors the situation in prisons and pre-trial detentions in Pavlodar. And this year, to date, she's been the subject of 6 civil defamation cases lodged against her by the prison authorities because of her work. She's not discouraged by the growing list of cases against her, and she told me, "They think they can make me stop, but in fact, these trials against me have given the prisoners the chance to speak out." I think her words demonstrate the importance of HRDs in Kazakhstan. They speak for those who do not have the opportunity to speak for themselves, in this case, for prisoners whose complaints are not investigated effectively and impartially as required by international human rights standards. The definition of an HRD, according to the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, is very broad and includes many people who might not be regarded as HRDs in the strictest sense. I particularly like the description in the UK government document on support for human rights defenders, which states that human rights defenders should be defined by what they do and not by who they are. They are people who challenge abuse of power by governments and corporations. They may be protecting the environment, opposing torture and other ill treatment, defending the rights of women and LGBTI people, but they may also be doctors speaking out about lack of adequate PPE during the COVID-19 pandemic. And talking of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Kazakhstani authorities' response to the pandemic have presented new challenges and risks for human rights defenders on top of existing threats. As in other countries, Kazakhstan has used pandemic-related restrictions as a pretext to continue with long-standing attempts to shrink the civic space and to crack down on critics and human rights defenders, or simply to silence those who've raised concerns about the way the authorities have dealt with the pandemic. First of all, we witnessed the passing of a new law on peaceful assemblies, which was signed off by the President in May, which falls short of international standards in many important ways. And this was passed in record speed without adequate public consultation. Then on the 22nd of June, we issued an urgent action calling for the release of Alnur Ilyashev, who was convicted for disseminating knowingly false information that threatens public order during the state of emergency. He was sentenced to restricted freedom for 3 years and banned from voluntary political and social activism for a further 5 years. He was detained on the 17th of April for his media posts, which were critical of the authority, accusing them of corruption and critical of their handling of the pandemic. The pandemic poses particular risks to those in prison, where it's difficult to enforce social distancing and to maintain the strict hygiene measures necessary. Amnesty International has called for governments to consider early release for those who are at particular risk and to use alternatives to pre-trial detention wherever possible. However, in Kazakhstan, HRDs continue to be held in detention despite the risks. Max Bokayev continues to serve his 5-year prison term despite his worsening health conditions. He had been convicted for his involvement in the organisation of peaceful demonstrations and his posts on social media. Asya Tulesova was held in pre-trial detention between the 8th of June and 12th of August. We published a public statement calling for her release because we believed that her pre-trial detention appeared to be a form of reprisal for her political activism. We based our call on international human rights law, according to which pre-trial detention should only be used as an exceptional measure, but we also called on the authorities to take into account the risks posed by the COVID-19 pandemic to people in pre-trial detention. The work of HRDs can be very demanding and exhausting, and not infrequently leads to mental exhaustion and burnout. It can also be dangerous and can pose a risk to life. I'd like to talk a bit about the resources that are available to assist HRDs. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the work of frontline defenders, and I hope that there will be somebody at this meeting speaking about their excellent resources on digital security. There are also organisations that offer respite and fellowships for HRDs. There's a programme run by the University of York which offers fellowships to HRDs from all over the world. And once there, HRDs can become part of the Human Rights Research Centre. There is also an organisation in the Netherlands which runs a programme called Shelter Cities. So far 12 cities in the Netherlands and 2 in Georgia are taking part, and they can offer respite to HRDs. Amnesty International is very happy to offer you more information about these resources. Thank you very much.